So hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for coming tonight to the Birchville Penny Arts Center mid-month book launch. I'm really excited to welcome our author this evening, Timm with 2 M's. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Otterson, and the incredible book he wrote, which I enjoyed every moment of reading, except when I thought I was losing my mind and had to double check facts I knew were true and check facts that I suspected weren't so true, but nonetheless, thoroughly enjoyed every minute. We'll meet him in just a second, but I just want to share a little bit. I should introduce myself first. I'm Mary Kozub, and I am the Director of Education here at the Birchville Penny Arts Center. And one of my most exciting and fun-filled jobs is this book club that was actually conceived by a docent many, many years ago. Her name was Jane Roubaix, and she's no longer with us, but she left this incredible legacy of reading books together. And we started by reading books that Charles Birchfield, our namesake, read, so we could better understand who he was and what his tastes were. But we quickly migrated over to reading local authors, which is in absolute alignment with our mission, which is to support the regional authors, poets, visual artists, dancers, etc., musicians in our region. And so we now exclusively read local authors. There is no limit to the number of them there are. We have read over, I would say, 75 books. And sometimes they come back for a second read, which is always a wonderful thing. So when you get that second book, please, Tim, make sure that I know all about it. I'm going to turn it over now to Michaela, though, who will explain a little bit about tonight's procedure. This is Michaela Boros, my colleague.
All right. So for those online, when Tim's done with his presentation, you can unmute yourself and we're going to open it up for questioning. So online, you can unmute, ask questions. Here at the table, same thing, just ask your questions to him. And I'll be sharing your presentation shortly. And this is also being recorded, so you can view this on the website after today.
So now I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's author. So Timm was born in a U.S. Army hospital on the island of Okinawa, where his parents were stationed during the Vietnam War. He was raised on Army bases in San Antonio and El Paso, and later moved to Shreveport. Did I say that correctly?
Shreveport.
Shreveport.
Or
Thank
Shreveport.
you.
Shreveport.
I see an S in there, but Shreveport, according to this.
Shreveport, yeah.
Louisiana. Following his father's retirement from service. He has a degree in mechanical engineering from Louisiana Tech University and a master's degree in ocean physics from Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland, where we spend a lot of time in the book.
Mm-hmm.
He earned a veterinary doctor's degree at LSU in Baton Rouge and has resided for more than 20 years in beautiful Buffalo, New York, where he practices an all-line feline veterinary hospital practice clinic. He spends the remainder of his time enjoying outdoors activities, working on organized veterinary medicine, veterinary charities, conservation work, and of course, writing. So I have one question for you before we begin, and that is, how did you happen to come to Buffalo?
For the job.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've been working at the Summer Street Cat Clinic since I graduated. So by chance, I ended up coming here and really like the practice, and I've been here ever since.
Well, we're happy you're here.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm going to turn it over to you because I know you have a PowerPoint you'd like to share with our guests.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, you guys can hear me okay? Got nice acoustics. Okay. All right. So
All right, everyone online, can you see the shared screen of the presentation? Okay, I'm going to take silence as a yes. Last time I did this, it was like a little. Let me just zoom in on you.
Okay.
great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you for having me.
Change it.
What? Stand up for
Well,
what?
you can talk, so people can see
Oh,
you.
is that better if I stand up? Is that okay with the
Yeah,
screen?
do
Okay,
it.
that's fine. Yeah, so,
Comfortable with.
okay,
that.
great. All right, well, thank you for having me. Really appreciate coming here. I'm actually a big fan of Charles Birchfield and his nature work. And there's a lot of nature in this book, as you might imagine. A lot of animals, lot of it's been an inspiration to me. So I usually just do a few other thank yous, and then I make the point that I'm a very informal person, and this can be as informal as you want it to be. I don't mind if you interrupt me. It's not going to affect my train of thought. I'm a veterinarian all day long. I get interrupted probably every 5 minutes or so, and that is not an exaggeration. If you know what being veterinary life is like, I have like a degree of like ADHD, I think, from being a vet for this period. So it's actually a better presentation if you interrupt me, because I'm probably going to say things that you're not going to understand what I'm saying, and it doesn't bother me at all if we do that. So I want to thank Guernica, who took me on, the publisher in Toronto. I was kind of surprised that a substantial independent publisher took my book at first glance and wanted to publish it. I'm very grateful for that. I should thank my son, who did the illustrations. One of them is up there. He's currently a political science student at UB, and pretty good sketch artist. So it worked out that he would do the illustrations. We can touch on that a little bit. And then I should thank my wife and my editor, Lori, who's here today. Probably would not have started writing something like this if I didn't know I would get continuously edited and feedback and updated and criticized. And so it's been really
Very nice, supportive way.
yeah. So, okay. So and the book cover, and there's a larger version of it there, was done by an artist in Long Island, Alan Jomak, who is a brilliant artist and a book cover designer. So I was really happy when that came out. It kind of captures a lot about the book. So so I'm just going to start off by reading, which is customary, I think. I'm not a professional reader, so I will do my best, and I'm nursing a cold right now, so I hope you can hear me okay. Okay. And has anybody read the book? I know you have, and you guys have, and you have. Okay. Okay. So, all right. You would have to be deranged. This is chapter 1, first sentence. You would have to be deranged to expect to spend your vacation like this. In fact, the whole scene was absurd. We traveled to Puerto Rico on a trip with my son's 4th grade class. He had been studying Spanish as part of an immersion program in Buffalo Public Schools, and we, my wife, my son, and I, were a few days into our long-awaited trip to the Isla de Encantos with about 10 students from his class, a number of parents, our favorite teacher, Senora Rio. More importantly, for this moment, here I was, standing with my friend and fellow parent, Artie, along with a Puerto Rican girl, staring at a strange and unconscious creature. Why me, you ask? I'm a veterinarian. It's not unusual for veterinarians to be brought lost and injured creatures. Just the week before, a group of high school students were walking in front of our clinic on a lovely spring day in Buffalo, New York, and found a small bird hopping around on the ground. A really small bird, a fledgling. The avian equivalent of a toddler. Mother Nature had decided it was time for him to leave the nest and kind of make it on his own. The parents of most avian species typically help out the fledglings for a while. This tiny bird was out on the grass looking pathetic, so the kids wisely brought him into our clinic, which happened to be right near their school. I'm going to presume that you have seen a black-capped chickadee before. Those are those cute tiny birds with black caps on their heads that will land on you when you are walking in the woods in places where people put out seed. This little guy was adorable. He was also apparently healthy per my exam. So I advised the kids to return the bird to where they found him and let his parents look after him for his transition into avian independence. Now, the creature Artie and I were staring at on this patio in Puerto Rico was not adorable. In fact, he was really horrific looking. I work in an all-feline clinic and have for a couple decades now, so my day-to-day practice has just been cats. Cats will keep you on your toes. The bite from a house cat has put a lot of my colleagues in the hospital. They may not be big, but they are strong and flexible and know how to use their teeth and 18 claws. One bite from a cat can send you straight to the doctor and on to lots of penicillin. Looking at this creature on the patio, I could not imagine what one bite could do. Artie was about to have a nervous breakdown, and I could not blame him. The girl who brought the creature to us, however, was strangely calm. My Spanish skills were rusty, and her English skills were no better. I'd grown up in Texas and had studied Spanish in school, but that was a long time ago. I was able to piece together that she had found this creature in her front yard, lying beneath a plate glass door. It was late, after 10 p.m. Alvin and I had spent the last couple nights staying up late, drinking beer, and our reasonable imitation of a mojito. We love Puerto Rico, and especially the evenings. These little native tree frogs called coquis would sing for hours. They would actually say coqui over and over again. Have you been to Puerto Rico? No.
Have you been? Just checking.
Yes. I know it's preposterous that I've been to Puerto Rico before, but I have been to Puerto Rico before. Yeah. So it's just arrow keys. Okay. I don't think it likes me. Let me see. Oh, okay. So it had gone into suspended animation. Okay. So, have you guys ever been to Revolution Gallery on Hurdle?
No.
You should go. Yeah, you should go. It's fantastic. Craig runs it along with his wife. And he actually made this poster for the International Cryptozoology Museum in Portland. I guess they're relocating to Maine, but it's thought to be like one of the best, quirkiest museums in the world, run by a guy named Lorne Coleman, who is a cryptozoologist. Someone who I hope at some point in my journey that I get to meet. I've met a number of interesting people. And then on the right is a Chupacabra. Right, and I guess I've kind of ruined the surprise of chapter 1. And it's hard to read a book to people and not ruin the book, so I try to be tactful about that. So
What is cryptozoology?
well, we'll get to that.
Oh,
Yeah. Do you know? I mean, do you want to break it down? Well, I mean, what's crypto? It means hidden,
Okay.
right? And zoology is cryptozoology is hidden zoology, right? So it's things that you maybe didn't know about or didn't understand. So I just want to talk about the genesis of this book. As I said, as was pointed out, I am a scientist. Studied engineering. I've studied oceanography. I've studied veterinary medicine, and I'm now a practicing veterinarian. And so I decided to write this book about 4 years ago. Probably it takes forever to get these to press. About my experiences with cryptozoology, and so along the way in my time, I've published a couple of articles on my work in physics of oceans, where I was doing like numerical modeling and wind force models and really nerdy computer work to try to understand like why waves happen and why temperatures fluctuate in bays and what the wind has to do with that. So if you Google me, which apparently you did, I do have a couple of publications in like the Journal of Physical Oceanography and that. And then I found out a few years ago that I also have a publication for the care of a goat, that a male Nubian goat that had mammary cancer. And I probably should have stuck a picture of a Nubian goat up here because they're beautiful goats. But when I was a 4th year student, we had a goat come in who had a massive mammary tumor, right? And men have mammary glands, or males have mammary glands, so they can get tumors. I became very attached to the goat and the owner of the goat. They're like 140 pounds. And we did extensive surgery, saved the goat. I spent a lot of time in the barn. I was like sleeping in the stall with the goat at times because he wasn't doing very well. And the intern and the faculty member were so pleased with my dedication to this goat that I actually ended up with a publication out of it, which I didn't even know what I was getting. But it's customary that if you really like to find out, anyway. So long story short, I decided that I would write case studies, which is what the goat paper was, on mythical creatures, right? And I would make them very scientific and straightforward. And so I started
Unbelievable.
right. Well, no, so I started out to write them like you would find them in a medical journal, like this is what happened, this is what happened, this happened.
Mhm.
And so I started in on the the Chupacabra story at my wife's encouragement, and I got really bored with it, right? Because it's just not that exciting. It's not that interesting. It's not. And then it dawned on me that, James Herriott had done this in the 50s and done it way better than I have. And I'm sure you guys all know James Herriott, right? The legend of James Herriott. So it's like, why don't I make my own memoir about my experience with cryptozoology? So I did. Right. And you touched on a lot of this. I've been fortunate to live in a lot of different places, experience a lot of the world. So all right, so I was going to jump back.
What owl is that?
That's a barred owl, and that's also by my son. Right. And I love barred owls. I don't know if you guys know barred owls, but they're fantastic. They're really loud. They're all over the place in Louisiana. There's some here, and they talk back and forth to each other. And I think I actually
Is that first creature real?
that's a chupacabra. So that is one person's interpretation of a chupacabra.
Okay.
Okay.
Because his torso looks amazingly human in a way,
Like from a zombie movie, human. It's not a healthy looking person.
His arms are his legs, but
Yeah.
his chest area, his stomach area,
Right.
to me,
Right.
is really different.
Right. That's half the fun of veterinary medicine, because it's all the same.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, whether you're dealing with a gorilla or a cat, we all have basically the same bones, the
Yeah.
same organs. Most of our problems are the same. It gets weird, as you go along and you treat snakes without legs and that sort of thing. But that is one of the principles of medicine. It follows along. Yeah. Yeah, that's a chupacabra, I believe, the pink thing in the corner, right? And there's some chupacabras that look like a Loch Ness monster, or look like the creature from the Black Lagoon, depending on yeah.
But they are real. They were once real.
Well, the one I saw was real.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So the book has a lot in it about animal rehab and caring for animals and fixing them up and getting them back in the wild. So at this point, we have taken the chupacabra and one of the classic animal rehab for birds. If you ever find a bird that's like flown into your plate glass window and it knocked itself silly, before the neighborhood cat comes and eats it, you should put it in a cardboard box and wait a couple hours and then open the box. And sometimes they just fly away. Right. And I've done that a number of times in my life in my own yard. So applying good principles. Okay. So back to the chupacabra. We've named him Cletus, just for reference. Puerto Rico has the name Isla de Encantos, or Island of Dreams. As I looked across the box at my friend Artie, I felt that I was in a dream. We put the chupacabra in a box. I think I said that. We'd spent the early part of the evening at one of the island's famed bioluminescent bays, where dinoflagellates glow in the water when splashed around. Floating in an ocean illuminated by microscopic organisms had altered our brains a little. I'd fallen in love with this enchanting island and its beaches, frogs, rainforest citizens, and really amazing coffee. Back at the box, Cletus was still for a minute or so, and then he tried to stand up but fell over. When the scrambling started, the scratching, the pawing, it sounded like he was slipping around on the cardboard. Then I heard him sink his claws into it, and he did it again. The shape of the box started to shift, and it appeared to get unstable. He was trying to climb up the side as if to get to safety. I placed one hand on a built-in handle and one on top to keep him contained. In retrospect, this was a really stupid idea. I had just been examining his awesome talons and imagining him grabbing and killing his prey with them. Now I heard them piercing the cardboard walls as he climbed his way up the side. In terms of the recovery, however, I took this as a good sign. It takes a lot of strength and balance to climb, I said, as my assistants watched as his talons jabbed through the side of the box, just missing my fingers. Then he stopped climbing and just hung on to the side of the box, and we waited. I figured that this was standard chupacabra behavior, when threatened. A lot of animals do this. Climb to a safe, defensible spot and wait on guard. We were whispering now. I'm not sure why, because this nocturnal creature probably had fantastic hearing. Yes,
Does Cletus mean something?
Cletus?
Or is it just?
It's just a
randomly
name.
Picked it
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. It's also my favorite Simpson character. Right, the guy that lived in the trailer park. You watch the Simpsons or not, but. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so. Can you read that in the back?
I saw when you posted it.
Yeah, it was on Facebook too, yeah. Right, so,
Doesn't you know what the definition of a memoir is?
yeah, so I think this is really funny, okay? This doesn't, it doesn't bother me at all. If someone has something nasty to say,
Other me.
to say about me. The books actually had really good reviews. I got a fantastic review in the Ottawa Review books. A science writer named Matt Bill did a really nice review. It actually won a Global Book Award. I mean, it's a, you know, anyway. So one of my staff saw this and was so upset about it. It's like, such a hater, you know. And she's like 25 and she's really sweet. I mean, I don't think the writing's bad. The plot's definitely meander, okay? And it's full of lots of information, which I think is necessary. And do you want to read a book from someone who's not intelligent and is really boring? I mean, who wants that, right? So I don't know. I don't see a future in her book reviews. So okay. Yeah. Okay. So you know, probably the most influential person in my life was my father. Yeah, of course.
I think that all of the information that you gave, and so much of it is real, where you really live, people you really knew or didn't know, made the rest of the unbelievable stuff feel real.
We're gonna get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think the casual writing style is helpful. One of the biggest, I've had a lot of nice comments by friends and colleagues that say, you know, I feel like I'm talking to you when I'm reading this book, which I think adds to making it more believable. I often reference Dan Brown. I love Dan Brown. And everybody knows Dan Brown. But if somebody finds a woodpecker that flew into their window and puts him in a box and lets him go 2 hours later and the woodpecker doesn't get eaten by a bird, I'm really happy with that. You know, like why not as a veterinarian put out information and interesting stuff and that sort of stuff. And I'm seriously nerdy person. I spend most of my day studying one thing or the other, whether it's really helpful or not. So my father, I think you referenced that we lived in Okinawa. My father was a gynecologist, OBGYN, who grew up in rural Wisconsin and just wanted more from his life. Hey, there's seats, have a seat, have some wine. Oh, okay.
Not you.
Yeah. She can account for the fact that I really am a veterinarian. Her friend is too, yeah.
Wonderful care of my
Okay.
kids.
Okay, thanks, Beth. So he grew up in poverty, was born right before the Great Depression, was very fortunate to have supportive uncles who decided that they would lend him money to go to medical school, which was an absurd thing for a poor orphan, you know, almost orphan kid to do. And I benefited from it tremendously because my dad ended up, you know, being head of a medical school and, you know, traveling the world and taking us along with it. So, yeah.
So he wasn't in the military.
Yeah, my dad was. My dad graduated from medical school from the University of Wisconsin, got drafted, got sent to Korea in the 50s, was a public health doctor there for a couple of years, loved it, got to go to Seoul, got to go to Tokyo, got to go to Honolulu, and he had like not seen anything other than like St. Paul, you know, right? So and so it changed his mind. It blew his mind. I mean, he went back and he went and started practicing, but then he decided, you know what, I'm gonna join the army again. And then, you know, off we went and having children the whole way. And
Is
so,
he still alive?
no, he passed away about 10 years ago. Yeah, but you know, very dynamic person, very likable. Sure, he would love this book. Yeah.
And where those pictures from?
Yeah, so in 84, we moved to Shreveport, Louisiana when I was in high school. And that is a picture of Caddo Lake, which is the next lake over from where I lived. Our backyard looked like that for the most part. We lived on like several hundred acres of woods. It was absolutely fantastic.
It's
You know,
stunning.
it's beautiful, yeah, and it doesn't look real. And like if you've ever seen Interview with the Vampire, like the scenes in the with the cypress trees and the moss, they're filmed, you know, right near my house. So not near my house, but in that region. They're absolutely, it's absolutely beautiful. So and I write a lot about that. So so the next topic is Louisiana. Yeah, go back up. Okay. So this is about the second chapter includes my brother. We just moved to Louisiana. I was 16, my brother was like 24. And my brother's a very keen gardener. I seem to be surrounded by gardeners. And we had started growing vegetables on the old abandoned farm there, right? So we were having a good time with that and exploring the woods. So I'm just gonna read a couple of minutes here. Okay. So we loved walking in the woods at night and did it almost every evening. It was especially good when the moon was out. We loved those woods and all the exotic creatures and would wander around trying to triangulate where the owls were roosting based on their calls. We'd bring flashlights, but not because we needed them. We knew every trail and twist in these woods. We'd use them to light up the eyes of the animals we came across. The best part of the game was trying to figure out if it was a deer or a fox or a raccoon. The coolest eyes we found were the alligators floating in the lake and ponds. It was an almost prehistoric feeling. The woods could get a little spooky sometimes, knowing that there were snakes and alligators all over. We just never knew what we would run across at night. One evening, one of the neighboring fences must have come down, and a creature ventured out in to graze on all the fresh pasture. We saw him from a good ways off one night. It scared the hell out of us. We kept our distance, studying him, trying to figure out what this enormous four-legged, slow-moving creature in the tall grass was. We snuck closer. He did not seem intimidated by us, and then, ever so slowly, he raised his big bovine head. Pretty cool. We did not expect to find a cow in our woods. The following night, we were out making our rounds again. We had not been to the greenhouse in a couple of days. We were growing all sorts of stuff out there and made our way there with purpose to check on our crops. We always walked quickly and listened. We approached the greenhouse and we heard a crash. That damn cow had found our secret garden. You can imagine what a 1,200-pound cow can do to a garden. We were pissed, but also a little afraid of the cow. Most cows are generally docile, but some breeds are kind of nuts. My brother knew this from his time on a horse farm. We were going to scare this cow, but we were going to do it carefully. We made our plans. Brad, that's my brother, was in charge. I was going to follow his lead. I felt like I was preparing for combat duty. We just watched the first Terminator movie together the night before. We were going to be cow commandos. Thinking it was a cow was reasonable. We were so wrong. My brother and I stealthily approached our violated greenhouse. Our anticipation was huge. We could hear the creature moving around inside and hear the chomping. I can still hear the crunching sounds to this day. As we approached the dirty glass and struggled to look through, we could see a large shape inside. My brother gave a cool hand signal, as if he were the platoon leader, and we silently shifted over a couple of steps to look through a broken pane. As I stared in, my first instinct was to run, and I would have if not for my brother holding me back. Squatting in our rich soil was an enormous hairy primate, chowing down on our carrots. He was pulling out entire clusters by the greens, shaking off the dirt, and munching them down casually. I was a pretty confident nature boy at this point. Snakes, alligators, tarantulas, horses, snapping turtles, they were all just part of my world. I had seen a lot in my brief life and had good composure when interacting with strange, and scary animals. Once when I was 10, I got to wrestle with a tiger cub at the El Paso Zoo where my mother was a docent. We have to include that
We
in the
have to
next
get-
program, yeah, because I really did.
We
Get to-
actually have pictures.
I know, I actually did get to play with a tiger cub, which is
Mhm.
freaking weird that I have pictures of that. Okay, but back to the ranch. But nothing prepares you for standing 20 feet from Bigfoot. This dude was huge and he looked exactly like you would expect, just like the sketches and the creature from Harry and the Hendersons. He was spectacular, like a lanky gorilla with dreadlocks. We stared, amazed and terrified. This thing could break us like twigs. I motioned to my brother that we needed to get out of here. He nodded, and then, as we started to slowly back away, the creature looked up and sniffed the air. We were screwed. Sneaking around the woods at night had seemed like such an exciting idea. All we could do now was silently stare at this enormous beast as it sniffed our scent and started looking around. Eventually, he looked our way and locked onto us. Once he started looking, I knew we were going to be found out. As we looked into each other's faces, I had the stupid teenage impulse to shine my flashlight into his face to see whether his retinas would reflect light like so many nocturnal creatures do. Do Sasquatch have a tapetum lucidum? Always a scientist, even back then. I was always looking for tests and data. My brother firmly grabbed my wrist as I raised my flashlight and gave me an "Are you insane?" look. It was then that the creature stood up and backed away and moved toward the door. I guess Sasquatch are not carnivores. If they were, we would both be dead. He just walked off into the night with a couple of handfuls of our vegetables. We waited on an incredible adrenaline high, and then we started home with real purpose, not speaking, but listening intently. I expected to see that beast jump out of the woods at any second. We made it home and locked the doors. We were freaking out. So answer your question. Delayed, right? Right. So, so cryptozoology is the science of hidden creatures. There's actually an international society for cryptozoology, right? And those are like 4 of the legends of it. They're all, I should probably put John Green in there. He's a massive, he's deceased. He's a massive Bigfoot researcher. So,
Are you a member?
I think it's suspended right now. I don't think there actually is. But I'm learning more about cryptozoology every day. There's all sorts of levels of it. We can talk about that too. But what we know is pretty staggering. What we don't know is pretty staggering. And what we've learned is kind of illustrative, right? The gorilla wasn't discovered until 1847 by Europeans, at least, right? Right. There was talk about it, that there were these things out there, but nobody believed them, right? In Africa, nobody, just didn't seem like it could be possible, right? The giant squid, right? The Kraken, 1870 was the first time one was actually caught. People talked about it for centuries, right? Whalers talked about them. The Komodo dragon, right? People thought the coelacanth was extinct, right? The ancient fish, maybe you've seen images of it. That's a really bizarre looking fish, right? One was caught off the coast of Madagascar and just like blew everybody's mind, right? And then in a more local, the snail darter in Tennessee, which has caused all sorts of ecological and conservation anxiety with like flooding areas, building dams and that sort of stuff. Like a simple little fish like that that we've lived with for 300 years, people didn't even know it was there, right? So, right. And that begs the question, so what are we losing, right? We pretty much systematically destroyed the ivory-billed woodpecker. I don't know if we can talk about that at another time, but after the Civil War, we pretty much decided we were going to cut down every tree in the South, all the old growth forests, everything, because we needed better furniture, right? Basically. So, and we knew we were destroying it. People just didn't give it. A lot of people just didn't give a damn. So, yeah. So I'm trying to make the point that there's so much we don't know. my son's version of Bigfoot, right?
How old was Nels when he made that?
17. He's 19 now.
Oh.
Yeah, he's doing political science at UB and he takes art classes now. He draws better now, but he did pretty well back then too. Yeah, so right. And there's the hominids, right? The great apes, the gibbons, the gorillas, all those sorts of things. A lot of them have gone extinct. You know. And most of the primates that have lived on this planet, we haven't discovered yet. They're ruins, they're fossils, we just don't know. So people speculate that we found like 5% of the primates that have lived on this planet, right? Because it's hard to find a fossil. They don't just happen. They have to take special circumstances.
Have you been out to Penn-Dixie?
No, I keep meaning to go. It's embarrassing that I haven't been there. And I even had a kid that went there like 7 times, you know, through public school, but I never went there. So my favorite is Gigantopithecus, which they've been extinct for about 300,000 years, we think, but they were 1,000-pound gorillas that lived in China. Right. So if you think a lowland gorilla is big, these guys are like 3 times bigger. So the possibilities are there. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So a large part of this book is trying to have empathy and understanding of animals. A portion of this book, actually like a third of this book, is set in Newfoundland. And I'll just kind of ruin one of the surprises. I was invited to work at a mermaid conservation institute there, right? Right. And we can talk a little bit more about mermaids. Newfoundland. Yeah, I have an ocean physics degree from Memorial University in Newfoundland. I lived there for 3 years and traveled all over the island and really enjoyed it. So after going there and working understanding mermaids and mermen, because they're important too for you know, breeding and that sort of thing. I was coming back, and so I just wrote this at the end of the mermaid chapter. And I think it kind of illustrates some things. It was comforting to return to Buffalo, to my home, my family, pets, and regular life. My experiences with the mer had changed me. I recalled my time as a preceptor in the Gladys Porter Zoo in Brownsville, Texas. The zoo hospital housed a mountain gorilla named Joe, who had been ostracized from the zoo's population of about 10 gorillas. Joe had not fit in with the other gorillas for years and would cause all sorts of disturbances when returned to the group. I never witnessed this, but cringed at the thought of the damage. I cringed at the thought of the damage an upset Joe could do. Of course, Joe's forced separation was unfortunate, as gorillas are social creatures. In the wild, Joe would have been driven out and left to fend for himself. But in captivity, he ended up living in isolation in the hospital, with the keepers treating him as almost a pet and looking after him, looking for better habitat for him at another facility. Joe was gorgeous, 300 pounds of muscle. I worked in the room adjacent to his pen, got to feed him every day, and we bonded to some degree. When I talk with humans about animals, I often talk about empathy and the ability to relate to other species. I've always felt that trying to better understand another living thing makes you a more complete person. Okay, so you brought up believability, right? And and I just threw up some creatures that I thought were interesting. Everybody knows Bigfoot. The Native Americans in the Northwest, I always forget what they called them, Sasquatch, some version of it. In South Africa, they call them an otang. In Nepal, they call them a yeti. You would call them an abominable snowman, which doesn't make any sense, but that's what it doesn't translate well. In Indonesia, they're orang pendek. In Australia, they're a yowie, right? And I already talked about Gigantopithecus. So just about every culture, and Native American cultures too, they all think that they're wild men out there. Almost everybody, even in like Hungary, you know, and so it's not like it's native to here. So it just brings up the question, how far-fetched is it that there could be a jackalope? Right? And people have written about jackalopes in Europe for hundreds of years, right? As a kid who grew up in the desert Southwest, they're a curiosity, that you see in gas stations up on the wall. But I mean, very serious painters were making jackalopes there. And everybody knows about mermaids, and
I didn't know that fairies and mermaids were so connected.
it's
Thank you
weird.
for that
It's weird, isn't it?
information.
It's weird. Yeah. Yeah, we might talk about that if you want to. You remind me. What's that?
Have you been to Wikiwachi?
No.
Oh, they have mermaids there.
Where? Where's Wikiwachi?
Springs, Florida.
I've been there.
Yeah, see, that's real. Wikiwachi.
So there's mermaid schools. There's
Yes,
like 100
yes.
mermaid schools all across the country. You can learn how to be a mermaid. You can learn how to do mermaid hair and makeup. There's a mermaid conference and a large mermaid conference every year in Washington, DC. So
That's actually true.
everything I say is true, but yes, there is a mermaid convention in Washington, DC. My brother lives there, so we have plans to go to that sometime soon. But there've been literally millions of mermaid sightings in human history. And I bring up unicorns because unicorns are actually in the Bible, right? Unicorns are in like cultures all over the place. Alexander the Great apparently rode a unicorn. We can talk about that. But how weird is a narwhal? Right? I mean, if you can imagine a unicorn, can't you? If you can imagine a narwhal, why can't you imagine a unicorn? I'm not so sure about Sasquatch or Mothman, but there were Chupacabra sightings all over Puerto Rico, all sorts of damaged livestock and that sort of thing. It caused a real craze. I mean, have you ever seen a platypus? Right? They're an egg-laying mammal that like stings you like a jellyfish. Like, what the hell? Right? I mean, it's just Mother Nature makes absurd things. And then I just love whales. I mean, living in Newfoundland, I just love whales. I mean, a blue whale, we could fit like a third of a blue whale in this room. I mean, how bizarre is that? And their communication and everything else. So yeah, just trying to make the point that we're.
Wait, who spoke Polynesian now? Oh, the mermaids.
Yes, yes, yeah,
That's right.
maybe, yeah. Interspecies communication is different. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we'll jump to Newfoundland. So I ended up in Newfoundland because I was kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, I didn't really want to be an engineer. I got a mechanical engineering degree. It's a very useful degree, but I really wanted to do more pure science. So I took the opportunity to study physics in the oceanography department at Memorial University in Newfoundland. If you've, can you move that, the Birchbill penny thing, like towards the middle maybe, because it's just kind of funny. Yeah, so yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. So I always loved the more pure science, and I just wanted to do more of that. And then I ended up getting the opportunity of going to Newfoundland. You've never been to Newfoundland and you like the outdoors and you want to see icebergs and caribou and moose and all sorts of crazy stuff. Newfoundland is an amazing place. What I didn't know until a few days ago was that the coat of Newfoundland has a unicorn on it. I don't know if you can see that from here. When I was putting this together, I was really happy about that. Like,
What are those other things?
those are lions.
Oh, lion.
Newfoundland is very British, right? So if the British did it, then the Newfoundlanders are going to do it. At least the sophisticated Newfoundlanders, not the loggers and the fishermen, but the bankers and the poets. Yes, right. I can vouch for that. I've seen it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the last
Yeah.
chapter.
All right. So I can tell me how much longer do I have?
Well, you had about 15 minutes.
Okay,
Anyways.
okay, so I just keep talking.
Open it for questions if you got it.
Yeah, okay, I'll read this one, I'll read this couple of parts and then we can do whatever questions you have. So when I went to Newfoundland, I was, studying physics, and working on computer models. I think I already said that. But my professor there was a Liverpoolian who was a really brilliant man. Got his PhD from Cambridge, really brilliant mathematician and physicist. But he also he liked being outside and hiking and that sort of stuff. So we really hit it off. The first time we went on a hike together, we've been working in the lab on a computer model for studying the wind force response to nearby Conception Bay. So the big bay right off St. John's was Conception Bay. I put in a lot of time entering data and tinkering with parameters, and finally we were making some progress. Science can be quite satisfying when your hard work starts coming together. Anyway, we were sitting in his office on the Memorial University campus on a sunny June afternoon celebrating our success. A beautiful day like this is too nice to waste inside, he said. There's a lovely cove on the same bay, and it's only 10 miles from town. That's all I needed to hear. I actually enjoyed editing code and doing computer modeling, but what I really loved was exploring the Newfoundland countryside. We packed up a 6-pack of beer and off we went. After a 20-minute drive, we arrived in the town of St. Philip's and went a little north along the shore of Conception Bay to the trailhead. In the 1990s, that's when I was there 35 years ago, there was almost no tourist industry in Newfoundland. In the decades since, the local chambers of commerce have figured out that you can make some serious money from visitors from the mainland and Europe, but they do expect some amenities. In this era, however, trails did not have signage, much less parking lots. Fortunately, Robert had been to this cove before and knew the way. We left the car along the side of the road and walked across a meadow toward a break in the woods. It was there that we saw the sign. Notice, carry bread in your pockets when you're entering the woods. Robert had not noticed this before. Bread? What for? Are the locals worried we might get lost and starve? I've always tried to be a responsible hiker, so I generally bring water, a jacket, a knife, a compass, a lighter, and maybe a snack. Robert made some comment about our beer being a strong ale, and that would be enough to sustain us. We went on to hike through the woods and to an isolated beach known as Goat Cove and had a grand time watching seabirds and swimming and sunbathing and drinking the pale ale. We couldn't help but talk about nerdy things like grid spacing, damping parameters, hard drive space, and computing powers. Spending a couple hours enjoying the bay that I was trying to recreate on a computer was inspiring. It also led to a discussion onto whether there was a contraception bay. Yeah, it's a true story. And where it would be located. I would later learn that the first intact specimen of the giant squid was caught in Conception Bay in the 1870s. The Kraken, as the giant squid was called at the time, had been terrorizing mariners for centuries. You must realize that sailors in the past would spend years in isolation on small ships in the middle of massive oceans. Being alone on the deck in the middle of the ocean on a moonless night must have been scary at times, and people on night watch were known to disappear. Tales abounded of enormous tentacles reaching onto the ship's deck and pulling people to their deaths. Whalers commonly found tentacles and squid beaks in the stomachs of sperm whales they caught. Add to this the scars noted along the mouths of these whales, and the legend of the man-eating kraken was born. These creatures remained a mystery until one of them was actually caught by a fisherman in Newfoundland in the 1870s. Ironically, the second one was caught the following year in Logie Bay, Newfoundland, where the Ocean Science Center would be built a century later. It was turned into the Mermaid Conservation Institute. That was previous. The Kraken so captivated the imaginations of the 19th century that one was featured in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was only when I returned home from the hike to Goat Cove and told my landlord Jim of our adventure that I learned that the odd sign that we had seen about hiking with bread was attempting to warn us about the fairies. Yeah, and I'll do one quick thing about fairies and then I'll take questions. And maybe talk about fairies and mermaids if you want to.
And this one.
Yeah, it goes on. Okay, so the book takes a turn. Apparently, okay. The most famous fairy visit of all time was to a pair of young girls in Cottingsley, England, in the early 1900s. Right? Have you guys seen that picture before?
Yes.
Right. And the other one's Tinkerbell, which what's that?
Tinkerbell's good.
No, she's not.
Oh, no.
You haven't been paying attention. Tinkerbell's dangerous. Yeah, she tried to kill Wendy. Watch it again. Yeah, yeah, she's. They only have room for one emotion at a time because they're so little. That's the Disney take on it. So you never heard that before? No, okay, yeah. Okay. They told their disbelieving parents that they had fairy friends down at the brook behind their country house. The parents humored their children and asked them to take a picture of the fairies with their newfangled camera. Again, turn of the century. The girls did just that, and it caused quite a commotion. Their parents went down to the brook to look for themselves, but couldn't find any fairies. The girls explained that the fairies only appeared to special people. And then after the adults left, they took some more photos. These photos included some gnomes. The event became a worldwide sensation and even caught the interest of Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of the Sherlock Holmes books. Doyle at the time was at the height of his fame, but was also mourning the recent and tragic loss of his child. As a result, he had taken an interest into all things supernatural, in the interest of contacting his son.
And very
So I'll leave it.
common at that point in time too.
Mystics?
Yes, the whole is culturally acceptable to.
Still kind of is. I know a number of pet psychics. I'm not kidding. I know several pet psychics.
You've been to Lilydale?
I haven't spent any time there, but I know about it and I've been through there.
Now explain what you mean by a pet psychic.
So
What,
if you want to commune with somebody, you often bring an item or a picture of them. And whether they're a pet psychic or any other kind of psychic, they look at it and talk to you and tell you how they're doing and what they're thinking and what they would like to tell you. Yeah. There's a whole industry of that. I hesitate to call it an industry. That's maybe unkind, but it's pretty big. Yeah.
They hold conventions. I think it's an industry.
What's that?
They hold conventions. It's
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah. Oh, you can talk.
Industrial.
If you went on this computer right now and Googled like psychic, there's like 1,000 people who would talk to you right now and try to help you understand whatever it was. Right.
They have them in the mall,
Is there a psychic in the mall?
Eastern Hills Mall.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
I did not know that.
I think I met her actually at the because she's a pet psychic too.
She might be.
Yeah, I met her at the adoption event a few weeks ago.
Could be.
Actually, yeah.
There's two of them. There's
Yeah.
one in the middle of the mall and then there's one on the side, but the woman is her name is Edie.
I didn't meet her.
And then they have a number of psychic events at the mall. They have one at Eastern Hills and then they have one at Boulevard.
Yeah, there's a spiritual vortex in East Amherst that draws spirits to it. I don't know. I was trying to make a Lilydale joke because I mean Lilydale's supposed to.
Really have to go to Lily.
No, I've been through there. I just haven't spent any time there.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and people are so serious about fairies in Newfoundland that the folklore department has a whole dedicated, program for fairy research there.
I did love that part of the book where I think it was your friend's mother that opened the door so the fairies could pass through the house because she built her house on a fairy path.
Just by chance, yeah. Yeah.
She was too love. Of course, it was self-preservation.
Well, no, the fairies liked her and could communicate with her. Yeah.
Why aren't fairy paths on the surveys when you have a house built?
Well, they are in certain countries, right? They are in Iceland, they are throughout Scandinavia. I mean, they will tell you not to build in certain areas because, you know, the fairies don't want you to take that and they will. I mean, I'm not making any of this up. They really will, right? Yeah, like, and if you're, and like, my wife and I joke, there's a certain restaurant on Elmwood, right? That every time another business goes in there, it seems like a really nice Turkish restaurant or, you know, an ice cream stand or something, but they go out of business like a year later. And if you were in Iceland, they would tell you to stop building there to turn into a park or something, because the fairies are clearly telling you that you shouldn't do that. And you're supposed to get permission.
So it's not us destroying restaurants, it's the fairies. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel better now.
Yeah. You can explain all sorts of things to fairies. Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the comment that Hater put up about, because you had extraordinarily high reviews that I read.
Oh, did
And
I?
I read
Okay.
everybody's reviews before.
Okay, yeah.
Have enough courage to invite them to visit us, and yours were fabulous. So,
Oh, thanks.
yeah. And I would recommend the book to anybody because
Oh,
I
yeah.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I did. I did have a little nightmares though about the fairies and the mermaids. And they're
And not the
previous.
Chupacabra.
No, because that,
So that was good, but the fairies was scary.
yeah, well, because they were on the wrong side of history and then somehow became good. I don't.
There's a lot
that
of theories
part
about
scared me.
fairies. Yeah,
That part scared me a little bit.
right. Yeah.
Didn't know if I could trust them or not. I knew where I stood with everybody else, who to be afraid of. But with fairies, I was a little nervous.
Well, so do you feel like you're safe in this room because like Sasquatch isn't gonna come in here
Yes.
and you're not gonna have to deal with Bigfoot?
Well, I. knew
But like
someone
if you could
was
just turn
afraid of
around and a
them,
fairy could be,
but
you
a
know,
fairy,
yeah,
they could be good or bad, right?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Just like Tinkerbell.
right. Yeah. Do you want me to read that one section?
Sure.
Yeah, because
There's a great song.
it's kind of weird because people don't expect that.
The artwork behind you would make a nice fairy one.
Oh, yeah. And I want to say that Birchfield actually painted a lot of things that we're not quite sure what they are, and certainly a little tree nymph that just slips
Oh.
out from behind a tree and
Right.
makes his or her appearance in the woods, and you just have a sense it's going to scoot back behind the tree. I mean, I wish
Right.
he were here today, so he should be part of this conversation.
I have to
I'm gonna
research
send
more.
you an image of that
Oh, I'd like that. Yeah. Okay.
work.
Just launch into part of the end of the fairy chapter. I did not know what to think of the comment that fairies were evil. I did not like this. Kurt, like most Newfoundlanders, would refer to the fairies as the good people. I like this much better, but the spookiness was still there. Across cultures, fairy lore has a trend toward the ominous and otherworldly. To some, fairies were spirits in limbo. Souls that were not pure enough to make it to heaven, but not evil enough to be sent to hell. So they live on earth indefinitely with us in the shadows. The most wild explanation of all regarding the origin of fairies was that they were angels in Lucifer's army. When Lucifer lost his battle with God for control of the universe, the angels fell to the earth as fairies. And I kid you not, the ones that landed in the ocean became mermaids. That's true. That's part of the lore, right? This mermaid tie-in with fairies had always seemed a little far-fetched until I started talking with Ralph about what the merologists were learning. Ralph was my coworker at the Mermaid Conservation Institute. All right. Merfolk find fairies as mysterious as we do. Ralph had spent a lot of time with the mer at this point. They describe them in a similar otherworldly way. It had been made clear from the anatomical, physiological, and genetic studies conducted so far that the mer are primates that evolved back into sea creatures, a parallel evolution similar to the ancestral hippopotamus transforming back into modern day cetaceans. Did you know that was true? That the closest land animal related to whales is hippopotamus?
I learned a lot from the book.
Okay. Well, I'm glad.
That was one
I'm
of the
glad.
things I did learn.
Okay, yeah, all right. So,
So where do leprechauns fit in?
yeah, I don't do leprechauns. I haven't researched that. I haven't seen one. Right. So somebody asked me about where I chose the creatures for this book. And my answer was I only wrote what I saw. So
Where did you see a mermaid?
at the Conservation Institute in Newfoundland. Yeah, which is a really good place to be a mermaid. Or it used to be. Used to be when all the fish were there in the kelp. I mean, Newfoundland's suffered a lot for overfishing and that sort of stuff, but the aquatic life there is fantastic. You know, I would see humpback whales like driving down the shore. You could see humpback whales out there. And Hmm? What's that?
Do they drive? Comma.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, but you would literally see them surfacing out there right off the coast if the fish were good. And the puffin colonies there, I had a puffin picture. I mean, the puffin colonies are by the hundreds of thousands. So yeah, if you like bird watching, if you want to see gannets and kittiwakes and all that sort of stuff, it's an amazing place for that.
It's a drawing. Oops, sorry.
Well, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
tonight. You certainly gave us a lot. to
Okay, well, thank you.
think about.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I found it a really enjoyable book.
Thank you.
I do want to thank you. And I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and spending time with us, and please join us again. We're going to meet right here on March 2nd at 6:30 p.m. when we welcome Dr. Christopher Kerr. Dr. Kerr is in charge of Buffalo Hospice, and he wrote a book entitled Death is But a Dream, Find Hope and Meaning at Life's End. And I sure hope that some of you can join us for that presentation. So thank you all, and it was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again. Thank you, Michaela, for helping us. And thank you for